Now, Water and Sanitation Minister Pemmy Majodina says South Africa consumes roughly 218 litres of water per person per day, while the global average is 173 litres. Majodina briefed MPs in the National Assembly on water security in the country. Minister Majodina says these figures are not sustainable, considering South Africa is in the top 30 of the most water-scarce countries. She has added that measurement should be the way below the international average and not above it. Opposition parties responded harshly, saying her promises are as dry as the taps in some municipalities. Majodina says it's critical that South Africa's water resource mix be broadened. The increase of sustainable use of groundwater, making more use of salination of seawater and reusing water for from wastewater treatment systems. Let's get some reaction now. Executive Manager of WaterCAN, Dr. Ferrial Adam, joins us to expand on the conversation. Dr. Adam, a very good evening to you. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to the late edition. In Johannesburg, for one, residents report that a throttled water supply and night switch-offs are already happening. How should residents begin to understand and interpret the depth of the water challenges we're facing?
Good evening and good evening to your viewers. I think that Joburgers generally know and have quite an understanding of what's been going on, because this did not happen, it didn't just arise now with the briefing. We've been going through this for about 2 years, on and off with intermittent supplies. We've had cutoffs, we've had the nightly cutoffs as well. So I think, and the throttling. So none of this is new. So the briefing yesterday didn't introduce anything new, and I think people are adapting to it. What is still very confusing for many of us is to understand when these things will be happening in terms of the new infrastructure that government's talking about. We don't have timelines. We don't have, do they have the money to do what they say they're going to be doing? How long are we going to have to experience this? And no one can really answer those questions. So there's a lot that people still don't know and don't have proper answers for.
I know that in a turnaround strategy, Joburg Water, for one, had blamed the maintenance problems on how the city bills and transfers payments to the entity. We know that the city's water pipes and reservoirs are old and dying from decades of neglect. But what kind of position or perhaps opportunity does that now place for government officials to, answer some of the questions that you asked and posed just now about how it will happen, where will the money come from?
It's still a very difficult one. Just on the issue that you've mentioned, yes, we know that the infrastructure and the pipelines have been, are aging. They need replacing, they need fixing. And just to give you an example, we have 12,100 kilometers of water pipelines in Johannesburg. The Joburg Water has only the budget to fix 14 kilometers a year, to replace 14 kilometers a year over 5 years. So that is definitely too little to actually fix the system that we're in right now. And that is the challenge, because with all the turnaround plans, with all the kind of talks that they have and the strategy, those are great on paper. But when you look at it actually in the implementation side, that's where we have the challenge. We are going to go nowhere if they're only fixing or replacing 14 kilometers of pipe a year. The good thing, though, from the briefing yesterday was the idea of ring fencing money for water and sanitation. That is a step in the right direction. How quickly that happens, we're not sure, and we do hope that that happens very soon, because Joburg Water cannot operate on the budget that they've been given right now.
Yeah, but if you have to look at how big the impact is, I know you've mentioned that there is an awareness, and what was announced was not essentially new, but the day-to-day impact, for one, the Constitutional Court was not barely operating because of the water restrictions and water cuts. University students, TUT students, couldn't write exams. Exams were postponed because of water shortages. So the impact and the planning around when these water cuts will happen needs to be a much bigger approach. There needs to be a much bigger approach, because the day-to-day impact is seemingly detrimental.
Absolutely, and that's exactly what we're saying, is that the communication from all these entities is very, very bad.
Yeah.
They need to realize they're not speaking to engineers. So tell us exactly what is going, but also what we need is the kind of program you had with Eskom and load shedding. Tell us that these are the areas, because they say they're going to be throttling the areas that use a lot of water. Which are those areas? We don't know. And, you can't just give a blanket from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. There'll be throttling of water, but where? We don't know. So we need better planning. We need better communication so that we do. And you're right. It's not just, you talk about the Constitutional Court, you talk about universities, but also there are many, many schools that don't have access to proper running water in South Africa. There are clinics that don't have proper, and this affects all kinds of our daily life. Mm-hmm. The other thing, just listening to your insert, there was definitely a better way to cut people off if they say they're illegally connected and the community is saying yes they are. Have a meeting, discuss things, don't bully people, and then don't provide something as basic as water.
Yeah, absolutely. As you say that, we know that South Africa's population is growing. It will keep growing. More water needs to be used. There's a bigger demand for water. How long do you think officials can keep telling residents to wash their cars using a bucket instead of a hose pipe? There needs to be a plan around doubling the national water supply. I mean, you've just spoken about the budget and the restrictions about the budget, the scope of the budget a year and how much money is being utilized to fix the problem. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, the population's growing. Measures to double up need to be sought.
Absolutely. Now, that was the whole idea of the Lesotho Highlands Phase 2 project, right? And the reason that was delayed was because of corruption at the DWS during the years of Mokonyane. So now it's back on track. And yes, we're behind time in terms of allocating more money, more water for people. The thing is that until that comes online, which is 2028, 2029, we will have less water for the growing population. Mm-hmm. The other thing that we need to realize is that planning was very poor. So population doesn't grow overnight. It's an increase where you can track it and you can actually plan for it and prepare for it. And we haven't done very well on that. And that is the challenge that we're facing now. So you have more people, an aging infrastructure, not enough budget to spend on it. And then, of course, you're going to have the situation we're in right now. But I think what we're seeing is that during this period, and always you'll see over the last 3 years or 4 years, when we come into summer, the water challenges are severe. Yeah. And that's what we're experiencing now, especially because for a long time we didn't have any rain.
What's also been interesting is that, one would have thought that the water problem is actually an energy problem because South Africa recycles a massive amount of water which needs to be purified, pumped into large reservoirs, and then pumped to the end user. But Eskom has marked over 200 days of load shedding suspension. I mean, how does that work?
Sorry, I'm not sure I follow your question.
Yeah, just getting a sense of how Eskom, electricity is needed to pump water, yet we have had electricity and that I'm saying cannot really be used as an excuse to say the water is not being pumped into consumers' taps because there's an electricity problem.
Yeah, so some of the issues are localized electricity issues, whether it's substations that are on fire or blow up, etc., that cause localized issues, and that does affect the pumping of water. But what we're seeing now is not because of that. What we're seeing in Johannesburg is the fact that half of our reservoirs are actually leaking. We have 87 reservoirs, 42 are leaking, and 20 are critically leaking that need to be fixed. So you don't have, because it's like a leaking bucket. Mm-hmm. You can't fill it up, and then you can't provide people with water. So the bucket empties much faster, and that is what's happening. The reservoirs are emptying much faster because of a leaking bucket. But of course, often the narrative is that it's people are using too much.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. Let's perhaps leave it there for now. Executive Manager of WaterCAN, Dr. Ferrial Adam, joining us there to try and make sense of the water crisis in the country. We do continue on the other side of this to bring you more news. Stay with us.